So thank you everyone that attend this session. Thank you, Grace, to chair. We'd like to present our last progress in Brazil about web archiving. So I'm Moisés Rockembach, Jonas Ferrigolo, Melo. Our presentation is Public Policies for Governmental Web Archiving in Brazil. And I would like to introduce the objective of our research. So we work in a research group in Brazil in the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. So in a university in the south of Brazil with web archiving and digital preservation. And so this study aims to identify the documents and actions related to developing the web archiving policy in Brazil. And our methodology was bibliographic and documentary research using literature of governmental web archiving and legislation regarding public policies. We started that work in 2017, our research group, and we count with professors, researchers from our state, Rio Grande do Sul, also collaboration with another states. Okay. So for us, it's an honor to represent Brazil here in that field, because the work we have doing the last 5 years is also we can call a web archiving advocacy, because it defends and to justify the preservation of web resources, and it's not easy. We show here more or less how many domains we have registered in .br. We can find many of these websites archived in the Internet Archive and the Portuguese Web Archive, but we think that's also important to address these issues nationally. So here's the statistics from our foundation that work with the domains in Brazil. It's registro.br. So we have now in May 2023 more than 5 million unique domains in Brazil. And we have a variety of technical resources and legislation to address the digital preservation, but not specific about web archiving. So we have this document, for example, is the digital preservation policy from the National Archive of Brazil. And this last version from 2016. There's more in English. Yeah, okay, that's the introduction in English. And then we can see that many documents are covered by this legislation, but not specifically web pages, because it was considered too complex or too much for the National Archive in that moment. And then from that, we try to justify, to defend the preservation of web pages, and in this case of National Archive of Brazil, about institutional web pages could be a start project. We split our presentation here from academic point of view, so what we are doing the last 5 years in Brazil. And then Jonas, you address the government field, so about legislative and executive branch. This is our research group in web archive and digital preservation. We have funding from we have 2 grants that help us to work with the technical procedures. So we start first looking to the international initiatives, and also to start to crawl and preserve web pages in Brazil. So we have crawling since 2018. We started to crawl the Brazilian presidential election campaigns, And it was a conturbating election when we have Bolsonaro campaign. And we still discuss it, many things about the campaign they did also in the social media. And we try in 2018 to preserve the web pages from all the 13 president candidates. And from there till now, more than 80% is offline. So we just have what we preserve in the work files. And here is our website, and then you can access all your publications. Yeah, just show a bit of our timeline here. So this was our first presentation 2018, our last in-person conference in Zagreb, Croatia. And we present our project called the arquivo.ong.br. That is a community of practices in web archive in Brazil. So it's a way to advocacy this subject, to spread around to awareness people that work in libraries and archives. And from there, we had in your research group, and also some work related to another research groups, some dissertations and PhD theses related to web archiving. So one in 2019 about web archiving social media, and then we preserve some videos in Facebook in the national campaign for presidential election. Then we had another master dissertation defense about strategic audiences, and then we was part in some international initiatives. Then we had in 2020, Jonas, you talk more about that, a master dissertation about the governmental web archiving, so preserve the .gov.br, that is the domain related to government institutions in Brazil. In 2021, we had one interesting dissertation about the ethical and legal aspect of information access and use. So it was a study 21 international initiatives and the terms of use and privacy policies of all these web archive initiatives. Then in 2021, also a PhD thesis that tried to show the websites from the President Dilma Rousseff, and websites that was deleted when they changed the government. Then we had some public speeches and events organized. So this one, 2021, archiving and preservation of the web, with some examples using also Conifer, Arquivematica. In 2022, we had another two interesting master dissertations. So one about digital preservation of the web, a more general approach, and another from the Library of Congress office in Rio, about the preservation, the collections they preserve there. And then we promote another thematic symposium to talk about archive the web and digital preservation, from websites to social networks. And this was interesting because then now we start to enter in the Jonas subject, that is the legislation, because we start to discuss the legislation also in that topic. And then we had some case studies, and now you can see some groups work on that. For us, it's a pleasure to see this topic growing now nationally. Jonas?
Yes. Well, I'm gonna present. Yeah, you can take it. I'm going to present the Brazilian development in web archiving in governmental field. First, in the legislative branch, Brazil starts the debates in 2015 when a bill was presented at the National Congress. This bill deals with institutional digital public assets insert in the web. In 2015, the bill was approved in the first commission as a bill that intended to be published as a law, have to cross many commissions at the National Congress, and the end of this journal will be sent to the plenarium to, and approved as a law, or of course it can be rejected in the end. When the deputy who was the reporter in the first commissions said something about periodic backups, but we understand the importance of the project. Then, as you might know, in 2016, we had impeachment in Brazil, and the political system was turned on these issues. And just in 2017, in the next commissions, the bill was not approved. The reporter says that it's because the obligations to keep content hosted in official government websites bring great operational difficulties, implying increased expense in storage technology. In this first step, you can see that the debates in political fields are not made by experts in these teams, in the team. Then in 2018, we had the elections, what was another big political things. And just in 2019, the bill was approved with changes. And these changes include social media profiles of the heads of the government institutions. In 2021, again, 2 years later, the bill was submitted to the Financial Commission, where it was approved, considering that the project would not imply impacts of the country's budget. And the last movement was in December 2022. The bill was sent to the commissions, to the Constitutions and Justice Commissions, and it's waiting for a new reporter. That might be the last commissions under the final approval. Now the actions about web archiving in the executive branch. These actions comes from the National Council of Archives, which established a technical chamber to define guidelines for the elaborations of studies, proposals, and solutions for the preservation of the websites and social media. The National Council of Archives is a collegiate linked to the National Archives of Brazil. This collegiate invites some experts to form a technical chamber. This chamber was composed by experts comes from National Archives, National Libraries, Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, and NuaWeb. We spent 12 months of working and made 17 meetings. Based on these goals, on general goals of this chamber, we produced 2 documents. One of them is the Websites and Social Media Privacy Preservation Policy. The document was made under the concept of micropolitics, and the policy aims to establish principles, guidelines, objectives, and responsibilities regarding to the preservations of websites and social media. And the second document was the recommendations of the basic elements for websites and social media digital preservation. This document presents a more specific test in which the steps correspond to the macro process of the digital preservations of websites. The document describes the steps of the preserving website and social media. The reference, the reference to compose these steps was the web archiving lifecycle model, a systematic approach towards web preservation, and the web archiving process. So these steps, you can see selections, define the scope, user community identification, archivability, prioritizations of the elements, the metadata, captures, quality control, storage, and access. Both documents were submitted to the public consultation. We have received some suggestions, and it was approved by the National Council for Archives in December 2022, and will be published as a federal resolution. We gave some recommendations to the government, such as continue to high-level debates, stimulate technical training of preservations of websites and social media, create a talent bank, and establish some partnerships with researchers and other organizations. That's the digital preservation. In conclusion, our observations reveal that the Brazilians' initiative is primarily focused on information science, with some involvements in communication, technology, and cultural heritage. It's crucial that these viewpoints are extended to another domains such as law, governance, politics, economic design, technology, artificial intelligence, ethics, linguistics, accessibility, and more. Although these are some limitations and identify Brazilians' actions, it's evident that there are efforts to transform web archiving into a reality in Brazil. Brazil is one of the right tracks when it comes to preserving websites, but just publishing the legislations is not enough. So we need to come up with some practical solutions and to make sure it's actually implemented. And in Brazil, it's now a reality. The country has a web archiving policy definitions and the criteria for selections, preservations, and archive methods. Yeah, and well, thank you for the opportunity to present our research here in Web Archive Conference. Here you have our contacts. You can find both of us in LinkedIn, and Professor Moisés Rockembach can be found on Twitter as well. Thank you.